Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
India-China LAC disengagement is two things. One, it's a major step forward in the assertion of our national resolve. At the same time, it's a reminder that military capability gaps between India and China have already reached unsustainable, unacceptable levels. These are also widening. Let's look at the positive outcomes first. It is hugely creditable how Indian troops stood on these heights, looking the Chinese in the eye for more than 4 years, never flinching. This was also a demonstration that the last decade's flurry of infrastructure building along Himalayan borders has begun to pay off. There is no other way India would have been able to move additional forces, including an entire strike corps with its armor and mechanized forces, ammunition and support arms to these heights in express time. Continuous resupply and maintenance of 60,000 plus troops at altitudes ranging from 14,000 to more than 17,000 feet underlines the brilliant work done by our government, army, engineers, and also contractors. Celebrations done, we must now prepare for the inevitability of another standoff with the Chinese in the next 3 to 4 years. That's been the rinse-repeat pattern since 2013, directly coinciding with the rise of Xi Jinping. He took power with the resolve to demolish the post-1993 status quo established by a series of agreements on maintaining peace and tranquility along the line of actual control. One reason he felt he could afford to do so was the military capability differential that had grown between India and China, also economic differential as well. There was Depsang first, 2013, Demchok 2016, and then Doklam in 2017. The 2020 move in eastern Ladakh, at least in my analysis, seemed an offensive pushback to the change in Jammu and Kashmir's constitutional status, the declaration of Ladakh as a union territory, and a renewed assertion on retaking Aksai Chin. Xi Jinping read this with India's rushed infrastructure building and increasing force levels in this area. He decided to pile in the forces to demonstrate to India the gap in capabilities or the costs of merely ensuring no Indian territory is lost. This India has managed to do, albeit at great cost financially and also at great cost in terms of wear and tear for equipment and fatigue among its forces. There is also a cost imposed on India in shifting the balance of its forces, especially strike forces between the two fronts. The activation of Western Himalayan frontier did result in the diversion of a strike corps equipped, trained and tasked to attack deep into the Pakistani plains. Now, this was moved to these heights, so this had to be repurposed, re-equipped, reoriented as well. Another division-sized force was moved out of its counter-insurgency role in Jammu, Poonch, Rajouri area. And the Pakistani infiltrators have taken advantage of it, as we know, because incidents have taken place quite frequently there. To counter this, once again, a division allocated to a strike formation on the Pakistani frontier has been moved in. Another division has been moved to the central sector. Central sector is what is Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, etc. So another division has been moved to the central sector to be the bulwark of the new China-focused corps, which is being raised at Bareilly. This is for the Uttarakhand frontier. This is a massive change in Indian Army's order of battle across two fronts. Pakistanis are watching because the balance has changed. The Chinese, on the other hand, do not have any active fronts. They have the luxury of treating most of their forces as a strategic reserve, since in their neighborhood, they are the only ones with the moves. If in the past decade, we have had 3.5 major standoffs with China, India would be delusional not to brace for another in the next 3 years or so. At least that's the algorithm. Where it could be will always remain the question because China can conjure up differences anywhere along a 3,500 kilometer plus frontier. This will keep India off balance, distracted from its deterrence against Pakistan. Pakistan, by the way, already feels emboldened to resume activity in Kashmir. The Chinese have also done India a favor by underlining that its latter day pacifist approach to military spending and modernization was unsustainable. When the first Modi government came to power in 2014, the promise was to greatly up defense spending, which it charged the UPA with neglecting. Data tells us that in the initial years of NDA 1, this promise was kept. Defense spending rose as a percentage of the budget and even as a percentage of GDP. In 2013, defense budget, that was the last year of UPA, in 2013, defense took about 16% of the national budget. 2 years into the Modi era, by 2016-17, it reached 18%. That was a significant rise in an expanding budget. It started declining thereafter, and today it's just 13%. That was never the expectation from the Modi government, and this despite the introduction of OROP, one rank, one pension, and thereby increased pension costs. Any impact of the Agnipath scheme on the pensions, any beneficial impact will take at least 15 years coming. For most of this data, I rely on a brilliant paper by PRS Legislative Research. You will see the paper on your screen. I'm also sharing a link with you. It seems that by his third year, Narendra Modi came to the conclusion that a real war was now highly unlikely, if not impossible. More resources, therefore, did not have to be pushed into defense and could be utilized on welfare instead. It worked well electorally, and national security could still be counted upon to bring the emotional upsurge when needed. Remember Pulwama Balakot 2019, just on the eve of general elections? All it took was the tiniest skirmish, and the nation's imagination was fired. The same trend of defense budgets declining as a ratio of the GDP and national budget continued year after year to reach today's low levels. The lowest probably since 1960, as data from macrotrends.net indicates. You will see it on your screen. Once again, I'm sharing a link with you. In the current year, our defense budget is just 1.9% of our GDP. The rude Xi Jinping nudge will now shake us up from this complacent mindset. We talk much about our military, but do not put our national wallet where our mouth is. Nobody is saying we should double our defense spending or take it to the peak Rajiv Gandhi reached in 1987, 4.23% of our GDP. This was our highest ever, but the ongoing decline must be reversed. What if India targeted an increase of a mere 0.2%, 0.2% or 0.20% of GDP in the defense budget next year? A calculation done with the help of India's foremost defense budget analyst, Lakshman Behera, associate professor at Special Center for National Security Studies at JNU, shows that presuming a 7% GDP growth, which we have right now, at 1.90%, which is the percentage this year, at 1.90% of the GDP, the defense forces will have about 43,000 crore more next year. Much of it will be eaten up by increases in salaries and pensions, about 3% on annual increments, and at least 2 installments of dearness allowance. That will leave very little additional for modernization and acquisitions. A mere 0.2% rise in the share of GDP for defense to 2.1% from 1.9 will put about 1,22,000 crores additionally at their disposal, or 1.22 trillion rupees additionally at their disposal. This India can afford. Since defense planning cannot be episodic, this should be accompanied by a clear statement of intent to take spending by just 0.1%, 0.10, just 0.1% of the GDP each successive year until it reaches 2.5% of GDP. This additional money will go into acquisitions and modernization, from fighter planes to submarines, missiles and long-range artillery, and of course, hugely needed improvements in cyber and drone warfare capabilities. This will mark a major reversal of the trend since 2017. We may still be right in thinking that a major all-out war is not likely to happen, but if your actions, as in diminishing defense spending, expose this thinking to your adversaries, they will also take it as complacent and move accordingly. The best guarantee for peace is to look prepared for war. That's the old saying. Build obvious superiorities over rivals in some key visible areas. Anything less will encourage both China and soon enough Pakistan into unleashing low level but debilitating adventurism. India cannot afford to leave itself vulnerable. Reversing the decline and raising defense spending slowly to 2.5% of GDP in the next 4 years is what India needs and can surely afford. And you know what? I will also tell you what we are going to do next week. So, next week in National Interest, we'll talk about how to raise some additional resources for defense and where to build superiorities.